Hello and welcome to ThatCatDeveloper, and in this video we'll be creating our models. So let's quickly tell you about what models are. Models are data structures for actions, for routes, essentially in our case for moderation action like a warning or a ban, which we'll get on with creating right now. To continue our work, let's go to our project and open it up again. And this is where we left it off from last time. We created pink route. Let's go on by creating a new folder which we're going to call models. So why we are creating a models folder specifically for that is so we keep our code organized, because in big projects, because I believe that if you like this, you write bigger projects, you really need, and I really mean, you really need to keep everything organized, because if you have too much files which are just everywhere, you're not going to know which is where and what it does. So in our models folder, let's right click and add, and we're going to add a new model, so new item, and let's find the class. Click the class and let's call this PlayerModeration.cs for C#, and this is what we're going to end up with. Now what you need to know is this is a model. A model, or in this case class, has properties. This is a simple property. What is this? It essentially is just something that the model has. For example, in our player moderation, this will be for the Roblox user ID of the person who has been banned, or warned. It really depends. Let's say moderated. These are comments, you can use them just for signifying what everything means. Now what you need to know about this is string. This here identifies the type of the property. This is the name of the property, and this and these are just the syntax. I won't be explaining them, as really you don't need them that much right now. But if you are interested in it, you can go to W3 schools and read about object-oriented programming, and then there they will explain what they actually mean, what public and private means, and so forth. So let's actually just continue and write our model. We need to know, other than the user ID, what the action taken was. So is it a ban or a warning? We need to also know the reason for it, and lastly the timestamp, which is when the moderation action was taken. It's simple, clean, and just what we need to lock moderation effects. Now that we've done this, let's go back to our moderation controller, and you need to add here to using, let's add Roblox Moderation API .models. Now why are we adding that? So when we are writing the code down, we know where the model is stored, so the file can find it when it's compiling the code. Now let's go on and firstly create our HTTP post. Now I've mentioned what HTTP post was before, but if you don't remember, HTTP post essentially is creating. So in this case we're sending a new data, a new moderation report. So let's create our route. Ignore the autofill, it's just that, yeah, it's kind of annoying actually. Maybe I'll turn off for the next video so you are not getting confused by it, but it's giving out a pretty good autofill. Now what you need to know about this is it is a function. It's the same in Roblox Studio. Here is an example. You have a function, you have the name of the function, and you have the parameters, and then the end. It's the same thing in C#. However, here you must note that you need to name the return type, because unlike Lua, C# everything is it's strictly typed, which means that you need to use the type. So if you're returning a text here, you type string. If you're returning a number, you type int. So in this case, because it's a route, we're using the iAction result, which represents a result, which I'm going to tell you later on what it means. And here we have the parameters. Now what does this mean? It specifies that the parameter property should be bound using the request body, which I'll show you later on also what it means exactly. But now let's start writing it actually, and before we we write it anywhere, we need to know one thing. There is a case where this route can receive incorrect information. What that means is, for example, you made an error in the code and it receives empty properties. So to fix issues later on, because if you write an empty report to the database, it's going to throw an error and it's going to break everything. So we're going to add something called validation. What validation means is we're checking the data is in order. Let's start it by creating our if statement, which is absolutely the same as in Roblox Lua. And firstly, we're going to check if the user ID, so here we should call it data, if the data's user ID is null or empty. What that means is it checks it basically if it's empty. We're going to do the same thing for the action, and in case they are empty, we're going to return bad request. What that means is we're essentially telling the client that the request is bad and because of the data that's been received. This means OR, so we're checking if either of them are empty, because if either one of them is empty, it's going to throw us an error, so we need to actually deny the request before it breaks our code. So let's make a little console write line, which means that in the console it's going to show us the information, because right now we will not store it to a database, but we'll do it in future episodes. So let's start. Firstly, we are going to create our moderation received so we can recognize it, and we're going to do this. Now this is just calling our data from above. You need to have the $sign for this to work, otherwise, as you can see, it will be portrayed as text. So let's do this also for our user ID, and later on for our reads. The console write line is essentially the same as print and Lua, so essentially we're just going to see that we have received information. But as you can see, it gives out an error because we're not just done yet. As you can see, not all code paths return a value, because in C# we have to always return a value. So let's return an OK, which means that everything has been passed through, and we're going to use this format to create a new OK. Firstly, the message is going to be moderation action received successfully, and then we are going to say that we've received data. So actually don't need to add a semicolon right here. This is how it should look. Now, just a quick recap. Firstly, we validate our data, check if it's empty. If it's empty, we say that it's a bad request and we don't process it or anything. If it is normal, we send out in the console that it has been received, and we give out to the client that we tell it, hey, everything's okay. So let's run it and actually test it. The good thing with Swagger, which is what comes automatically added to this, is that you have a web page in which you can test it, which is really useful. As you can see, we have a new post. You see a new post route, which let's open it and let's click try it out. As you can see, it already gives us a sample request body, but I'm going to use my own, which I'm going to put down below. Now, this format right here is called JSON. So what is JSON? Wrong. Yeah, JSON is JavaScript object notation. So as you can see, it's a really neat way to store information, and it's used by almost everywhere. It's used everywhere. So this is a really simple JSON, and it is a resemblance to our model that we created. As you can see, it has the user ID, it has the action, result, and timestamp. So let's click execute, and as you can see, it returns us a 200 code, which means everything was okay, and we received our body from the response. And let's open our console, and as you can see, we've received a new moderation and everything has gone through it. If everything works, in this case you received the 200 code and you will see the data logged in your terminal. So soon we will write dual coding, and actually it's not very soon, it's going to be the last episode, but we'll be writing this exact JSON to the API using HTTP service, and this is how your code will essentially work and how we will track it. So let's do a little bit of a recap on what has happened. We firstly create a player moderation model. We built a secure and simple post moderation endpoint. We tested it with Swagger, and later on we're going to continue working on it. So this is all from me for this tutorial. I wish you all a very good day.